Hello, GLAAD members. My name is Jeremy Blacklow. I'm GLAAD's Director of Entertainment Media, and I'm here today with the cast of A Kid Like Jake. We've got Jim Parsons, Silas Howard, the director, and Daniel Pearle, the writer. Thank you guys for being here. Set the stage for us. What's A Kid Like Jake about?
A Kid Like Jake is about a couple who are married and parents of a little boy named Jake who's 4 years old, and they're somewhat average, normal, happy family. And Jake is about to go into kindergarten, and in the process of figuring out where Jake's going to go to school, his preschool administrator, played by Octavia Spencer, suggests that because this couple could use some funding and through a scholarship because they need help paying for it. And she says one way that might help you stand out from the crowd is if you mention Jake's gender fluid play. He enjoys dressing up as princesses. He enjoys fairy tales more than, say, trucks, cars, and G.I. Joe. And this couple, played by me and Claire Danes, our ears really perk up at it. Not because it's weird to us, but because it's that special time in a child's life when he's leaving this nest, as it were, of mostly being at home, mostly being around his parents, and he's exposed to more and more people who are just inadvertently, really, by interacting with him, saying what they think when they see him and who they think he is. And so what's just Jake to them suddenly is taking on possibly these kind of labels, and decisions are being made. And the movie really turns into a story about what happens to this couple, this family, as they discuss how to move forward, what's really going on, and how they are both behaving as parents. I'm breaking down.
No, you did great.
Okay.
Silas, take it from there.
To riff off of Jim's excellent synopsis of the movie. And what I love about this
story is that it really, first and foremost, the script is so incredibly written, and the dialogue is how people talk. And for me, it's like I'm always interested in, when people say the wrong thing and do the right thing, and this really looks at the slippery slope of, like, we have our politics and what we say, and then how does it feel when you feel protective of somebody, or you have fear, and what comes out of that fear, which is coming from love, and that it's hard to be a human. And this really delves into that, and looking at that paradox of how we're told, be different, stand out, be different, stand out, and then paradoxically society punishes so many people who stand out and are different, or cast shame on them. And so this is a really human story, exploring that within relationships, instead of this is like, these people over here say this, or these people, it's like, what happens between us? It's so difficult to even negotiate how we love and how we manage fear just within our own houses. So Daniel, where'd you get the idea for A Kid Like Jake?
I think there were several sources of inspiration. It started as a play that I wrote. The play was done in New York in 2013. And I think when I first had the idea for the play, there were a number of sources. I'd read a couple of articles that were sort of talking about just how much the conversation around gender identity had changed when it came to young kids, kids 4, 5, and 6, and the new language that was emerging. And as someone who had certainly, I had my own Cinderella phase, my own dress-up phase, when I was that age, but at a very different time socially. It was sort of striking to me, wow, what would that conversation look like, if my parents had been raising me now? And I think that was definitely part of it. The other piece, my day job in New York City, where I've lived, has been working with families, with kids of all ages, but tutoring, younger kids, high school kids, and watching parents try to get their kids into college. And I think one thing I was always sort of struck by, and this is sort of what Silas alluded to a little bit already, is that every parent wants their kid to be special, but no one wants their kid to be different, which is sort of two halves of the same coin in certain ways. But there was this interesting tension, and I think I sort of wanted to explore that paradox in some way, because there is an impulse for to stand out and you want your kid to sort of take over the world, but then there's also a protective impulse that you don't want them to get hurt. And so I think, though I don't have kids of my own, that was something I was very aware of, sort of all around me. And I think I wanted to write a play that explored that.
Very cool. And I feel like Sundance is a place where new stories come to find homes. And this is a place where authentic storytelling really takes place. What do you hope audiences take away from watching this film when they see it?
Should we rotate around?
Sure.
I mean, with being very specific about what I hope an audience takes away, I don't know if I can. But in general, I would not only hope, I would assume, because it's so well crafted as a script and as a story, and the conceit and the way Daniel put it together had such a clarity from the moment it started, and that is, it takes something that I think people are as we've said, afraid to talk about. They don't want to talk about it wrong. They just see it as something kind of almost other or just overly unique, and it's just kind of stay away. And what this story does is bring it down into, as we keep talking about, when it gets down to your home and your family, without shortchanging the uniqueness of each individual and each individual's journey, there is a commonality. One of the things I keep saying in everything we talk about, and I felt from the moment I read it, was one of the brilliant things about this script was how it took something like that, and it could have been any childhood thing that this young person was going through. 4 to 5 year olds, I mean, they go through all sorts of things, and one of the joys here is, and I think it's important for people, not necessarily important they know going into it, but it wouldn't hurt, is that you don't get a for sure answer on this. We let the 4-year-old be the 4-year-old, and it kind of turns the camera on the people around him, those people that are most important in his life, the adults. And maybe that's what I hope people get a chance to listen to these adults honestly and with the best intentions fumble through these conversations of how to let this young person be himself and protect him at the same time. Your turn.
Okay. Awesome.
I would say ditto, and leave with the curiosity. I think that maybe, for me, it's like I find many things in life confusing and wonderful because of that. Gender's confusing, and I love in the movie, because it was in the script, is that everybody's wrestling with a different identity. I'm a single mom, I'm a teacher, these are all constructs, and what's beautiful is that Jake could be, so many people will identify for different reasons. That's what I hope. But to really, it's such a great time to push against these ideas of like left and right and binary. I hope that it kind of pulls in people to the messiness of how hard it is to be a human, and feel more curious than messaged. I think it's the farthest away from messaging as possible.
Yeah, I would just say, I think, people talk a lot about tolerance, and I think in certain ways I feel like we also need to tolerate ambiguity and uncertainty and messiness, and in certain ways that's what I would hope people would take away, is that there aren't always clear-cut, obvious answers as a parent or as anyone in your life, and having tolerance for that I think is as important as anything else, and so I think that's
Silas, I don't feel like I can open my laptop without seeing your name somewhere these days.
I'm sorry about
you
that.
are having a moment in Hollywood. You are everywhere. For those who might not know, Silas is involved with Transparent, but also an executive producer on Ryan Murphy's new series, Pose.
Oh, yeah.
How is trans storytelling changing right now? Do you see a shift?
Yeah, there's such a shift. I mean, and it's due to so many storytellers, starting with Genji Cohen with Orange Is the New Black and casting Laverne, and then Jill Soloway's work with Transparent, and now with Pose, where it's 5 trans women of color as the centered storylines, and centering stories is the big win, because then everyone gets to connect. That's what centered stories do, is it opens it up to the universal when you fully allow the range of human emotions and all of that. So all of those people that I've mentioned have been creating that, and I've been such a when I was here in 2002 with my first film, we were
doing that where we don't want to talk about the gender. We just want you to we want to show you a friendship. We have friends, and that's a radical act to show it. And we didn't, and the characters didn't die, and it was a big deal, you know. So I've been so committed to that where I try to work really hard to avoid the explaining dynamic, because I think that really is a disservice to the audience. Like, I think people can do the math. I think they can connect if you give them something to connect to, if you take a risk and and just put your heart and soul and not distrust the audience.
Thank you, first of all, for the amazing work you're doing.
Thank you. And actually, I want to give a shout out to GLAAD, because when we were working in pre-production, I met with GLAAD, I met with Nick Adams to talk about the project and make sure, I just really value the support that GLAAD gives to all the media around this, and consulted about language for Judy's character around Jake, and that's where gender-expansive came. It's been a big hit.
Gender-expansive?
I'm very into it, so thank you, GLAAD.
Wow. Well, we're honored. Happy to help. So, excuse me. So, Kid Like Jake is premiering here at the Sundance Film Festival. It's one of the most buzzed about films here. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.